Do you suffer from anxiety, from depression, maybe even chronic pain? Well, listen up. Truth Be Told is going to tell you about a breakthrough program built on over 100 years of therapies used in America's returning veterans to help you successfully overcome PTSD, anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. The secret proven in study after study. Music therapy. The effects of music are nothing short of amazing. From strokes to PTSD, music has been shown to improve the quality of life. Now, one of the latest music therapy programs being used in America's veteran hospitals can be yours to experience for free, at home, and to help your own anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. Or just relax after a hard day. It's called Whole Tones. It takes music therapy to a new level. This revolutionary program makes use of specifically designed frequencies that have been shown to stimulate your body's natural healing power down to a cellular level. If it works for battle-scarred vets, can it work for you? Well, experience it for yourself for free at sweetwholetones.com. Like Tony Sweet, that's SWEET. Go to sweetwholetones.com. Now enjoy the show. Do you suffer?
What's your thoughts on government cover-ups or covert societies attempting to control humanity? Do you believe in ancient astronauts, intergalactic communication, or extraterrestrial visitations? Ever had an experience with disembodied spirits or the paranormal universe? Are these subjects fact or fiction? Each week, Tony and Eddie explore these unbelievable realities and beyond. Exclusively on Truth Be Told.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm your host, Tony Sweet.
And I'm Eddie Connor. Today our exceptional guest is discussing walk-ins.
That's right. Author and quantum touch practitioner Claire Candy Hough will get into the details of what walk-ins are.
I'm excited about it. It's one of my favorite subjects. Now, she'll be here employing her master teacher degrees in both the traditional Usui disciplines and Reiki, as well as others. Claire Candy Hough helps people to fashion a beautiful life and ultimately heal themselves from within. Using her ability as an angel intuitive in counseling and emotional and physical healings, she brings comfort, direction, and clarity to those in despair. She also inspires them to see the beauty, magnificence, and of course the power inside themselves.
And we'll be discussing her newly released channeled novel, One True Home, Behind the Veil of Forgetfulness.
We love that. Today our show is surely guided by angels, and our conversation will be fun, educational, enlightening, and of course interesting. Why? Because we have the extraordinary Claire Candy Hough in the house with us.
We love applause. Candy, do you want to go by Claire or Candy? Is there one that over the other?
I usually get Candy over Claire.
Well,
I answered to both.
Candy and my last name Sweet.
There
so
you go.
Candy Sweet.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know the LA traffic can be hell,
Yes.
but we're going to talk angels.
Oh, that's lovely. Yes, lift up the vibrations.
That's right. Well, first of all, I want to go back to something that we kind of do here on Truth Be Told is finding the journey of how you got your journey. When did you realize that you had a gift of the healing and in touch with angels and all of that wonderful stuff?
I started seeing angels when I was very young, angels and fairies, and they were my constant companions.
Oh, wow.
I had visions as a very young child, and that wasn't supported, and I grew up not thinking that I was normal. And so that was my earliest remembrances of it. And as I got older and as I saw myself as not being normal and it not being terribly supported, I started to turn it off. And then my earthly incarnation took a downward spiral, and I drew people to myself that were quite dark, quite controlling. And because I'd forgotten my light and I'd forgotten who I was. And so the journey over those 47 years was somebody who was a victim, somebody who was codependent, somebody who did not believe in herself, got her identity from outside sources. And after a while, the burden of giving her power away grew very heavy on her. And so she unconsciously started to ask to exit her contract. She did not want to live anymore. It was just too heavy a burden for her to carry, to have forgotten who she was. And it got to the stage where she drew a very controlling, abusive man to herself. She was in a 26-year abusive marriage, and it didn't get much better after that. She drew somebody equally destructive and deceitful to her. And then it was at that point that she just tried to end it twice and just check out. And we on the other side don't really like to see anybody suffering. We know their lessons must come in hardship and adversity sometimes to really get their attention. But especially over the last 20 to 30 years after the harmonic convergence, when it was so important for each individual soul to keep their energies as high as possible, it was actually like a dearth on the collective for somebody to not keep their life force energy high and vibrant. And so we, on the other side, those spiritually advanced souls, would come to the person and saying, look, we know you want to exit the contract early. If you would give over this vehicle for somebody to walk in, and you can go out with honors, having given over the vehicle, the human body, and then you can stop your pain and suffering. And that's what happened to the former soul on January 11th in 2003.
Is that why when you talk about the former self as her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I have her memory imprint. It's like a computer chip. Walk-ins get, they remember to feed the cat and call grandma on her birthday and all those wonderful things because they're implanted in there. But we do not get the emotional imprint of the former soul, and that would highly stop us from completing our contract when we come back. If we took on the pain and the suffering, the anger, sadness, bitterness, resentment, and regret, it would actually stop us from completing or starting our mission. And so while we have unconditional love, we don't have all those extraneous programming and belief systems and things like that. We come in with a clean slate. And it takes us a while, because we don't know what's happened to us. You come from a higher dimensional frequency, and believe me, back then, 2003 was pretty much third dimension. And it gets the memory of it gets squashed on what's happened to you. But you're living the wrong life as you come in with different attitudes and perceptions and characteristics and personality. So it does take you a while to try to figure out what's happened to you. Fortunately, after 3 months, I was led to a spiritual counselor and also an international seer who both told me on 2 different occasions that I'd had a walk-in experience, and mine was an angelic walk-in experience, as there's an angel in the body now.
So a I don't know a lot about walk-ins, but this is fascinating because in my mind, the transition, like one night, it's like the whoosh, and one's out, one's in.
Like
and
Meet Joe Black.
Yeah, yeah. Is
Exactly.
what was. I'm trying to think in my mind how this transition happened. I mean, was it like one death and one birth? Is that how it works, or?
Well, it's similar to how a baby is born. Okay, we are all from somewhere else. When
Right.
some people say, "Well, it's such a extraordinary concept to get your head around," but truly, we all come from somewhere else. That
right.
soul will come in through a baby's body, and before it comes in, it contracts for its mission to come in, and then the baby grows up. Well, it's not that far a stretch to think that this human being wants to leave their contract and exit early, and there are exit points built into people's contract if they really do want to leave early. And so they get to the stage where they just do not want to fulfill their contract anymore, and so that they can walk out and another person can walk in. Not just anybody can walk in, though.
Right.
Right.
To take that vehicle for a stroll around the block. There are a lot of dark energies that would love to do that as well. It's those spiritually advanced souls that come back to be of service to humanity.
How often do you think this happens?
I was on Rachel Lang's show, and she asked me a similar question. And when I tune into my angelic family, the Posse of Angels, they told me that there's about 1 million walk-ins on the planet, at this time. And the subject of walk-ins and also twin flames is getting very popular. It's getting to be a hot topic because more and more people are shifting to perceive that this is actually a reality and this is possible, and get their heads around the concept. And so they're actually wanting information on it. And with this, there are going to be more walk-ins that are going to be seated on the planet as well, because walk-ins hold the vibrational frequency for between 800,000 and 1 million people with their vibrational frequency.
That's a lot.
Yes, because they come in very clear.
So the image I get when I hear you say this, first of all, you're the most articulate walk-in I've ever spoken to.
Thank you,
And
Eddie.
there's a frequency of purity and authenticity and sincerity that comes through when you speak about it. And the image I get when you said there's roughly for every one walk-in, they're holding the space for 800,000 to 1 million other humans, is I see these evenly distributed pinpoints of light around the globe so that one walk-in's not getting pulled on too much by a cloister of humans that are
Yes.
dense energy.
Yeah. I was going to say, I've been asked also, have I ever met other walk-ins? And it's rare. It does happen. Actually, I had several people over the last 12 years since my walk-in that have come to me as they have had a walk-in experience, and it's been like 2 or 3 years, and they still are really quite dazed and confused, and they haven't really, gotten on their path yet of being of service to humanity. But you're absolutely right, Eddie, because we are seated in different parts of the world to anchor in the light. I was on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia, where I created that community of light. If you just put us all in one spot, then the light wouldn't be shining on those other areas as much.
That's fascinating. I grew up seeing fairies too. It's very rare that I get to talk to somebody else who had fairy experiences growing up.
Yeah.
And so what was your one fairy experience that stands out for you?
I have so many, but the one probably that stands out for me most is when I was in my kindergarten playground, and not thinking that I was normal with everyone else. I was off literally playing with the fairies along by the
creek.
on the edge of our playground, and the other children were playing, and the teacher told me, go over and play with the other children, but I just didn't feel like they were my friends. These are my friends.
Unconditional love and pure light
love,
and
purity,
you're
fun.
and you're talking to each other. You're from the same sort of group of consciousness, and it's family.
It is, and it's just so loving and so sweet, so non-judgmental, and so accepting. Yeah.
Wow.
How was there a point where you stopped seeing fairies, or do you still see fairies?
No, I still see angels and fairies, but I had my first near-death experience when I was 5 years old, and that should have brought me back into, reminding me that this is real. And I tried to share it with lots of people, but they said, "Oh, since you bumped your head, you're not normal. You're not normal. So don't worry, you'll get normal again." And normal for me was very different from other people. But I did turn it off completely, and we moved into a Victorian home when I was about 8 years of age.
Ooh, girl.
And my older brother told me, let's go and investigate the basement. And as I walked down the basement steps, I felt, and I'm just getting shivers all over, I felt this dark energy. And he said, come on, there's lots of different things that the former people left in these rooms. Let's go check it out. And I got off the last step, and I stepped on a few more steps, and I felt this energy grab me and just squeeze me, and I felt as if like a bellows squeezing the life out of me. And I ran up the steps, and I never went back in the basement again. But from that day forward, when I would go to sleep, when I would just be falling asleep, I would feel this entity come and scoop me up. And so I tried desperately to tell somebody. I used to sleep with mountains of stuffed animals on top of me to try to protect me. And it was just so scary. And I turned off all of my psychic awareness when I was 9 years of age. I then learned, after my walk-in experience, I was at a party, and my Reiki master was giving this party, and a gentleman kept on staring at me from across the way, and he came over, and he took my hand. He said, "What happened when you were 9 years of age?" And I went, "Never mind," and I grabbed my hand back. He said, "You're going to have to deal with this," he said, "in order for you to get on your path." He said, "This is really important for you to acknowledge this and to get over it." Well, what happened was there was a pedophile who had died in the house.
Oh, wow.
And his spirit was in there, and he would capture me every night and take me away and sexually abuse me in the etheric realm or wherever he was taking me. And it was just so scary. And through a spiritual healer, I was able to release that and to acknowledge it and to go beyond it.
Oh my
How
God,
frequently
that's
are you?
crazy.
Would the former personality? I don't know the correct terminology. The
The
former.
former Candy.
Yeah, the former Candy. How often has she and her astral body, her light body, come to visit you, if at all, since you've stepped into her space?
She wanted back in the body about a year ago. She was so traumatized by her 26-year abusive marriage and her then 4-year destructive marriage after that. She was not healthy enough to go through the transition level of your welcome home party, your life's review, and standing before the etheric council. And so she went into spirit hospital. She was just too traumatized by her life. And she was there for about 10 years.
Yeah.
A long, long time. Well, a long time on Earth time, and not so much in Heaven's time. But when she got out, she took a good look at what I'd created. And
wanted it.
my twin flame, and boy, did she want it. And she wanted to push her way back in the body. And I discussed this with lots of, healers and spiritual friends of mine, and they said, well, you have to put your foot down and say no. You had your chance, and this is not possession. So, I love you very much, but you can't have back in.
Well, I'm a firm believer that our vibration is where we last leave it. And so even though she's been in the spirit hospital, and I love, because a lot of people don't talk about things like this on the show. So she was having difficulty on Earth. She's in the spirit hospital on the other side. You get to walk in and pick up where she left off, but yourself as a totally different human being and different soul. Even though her soul wanted to come in and pick up where she left off, I'm a firm believer that she would have come back into some chaos, her stuff, not yours.
Right.
And reactivated 20-some years of stuff where she was like this, and she, it wouldn't have worked for her the way you've created it.
No, it certainly would not have. And, she still had to, even though she was in a spirit hospital for 10 years, that just means her vibrational frequency then is high enough because she's cocooned and wrapped and sung to in the angelic language of light. And it's just wonderful how in heaven, no person is left behind, and we're taken care of and we're loved. But she then, and it was at that point that she would have had to have gone through her stuff.
Yeah.
Take a look at this, and this is still needs resolving. So it wouldn't have been to come back and just take
You're
over the
like,
body.
Get away, go back home.
Yes.
Another thing was popping in my head. There's so many people, and I'm sure you may have heard this before. It's people with split personalities.
Right.
Have you heard that before about, do you have a split personality?
Absolutely. There are a lot of people that say, couldn't you have just had a spiritual awakening? And there's certain aspects of what I went through that go so far beyond just a spiritual awakening. For instance, the former soul was a lovely Jewish girl. When I walked in as Angel Ariel, I wept over Jesus and Mother Mary and icons, and I started wearing crosses and sort of, that kind of thing. My taste in music changed so much. I used to weep when I heard Celtic and Irish music, and no idea where that certainly wasn't a part of the former soul's lineage.
Right.
Again, taste in foods and clothing and all kinds of things, because although we have the memory imprint of the former soul, we bring in our own personalities with us, and that's formed already. As that soul.
From former lifetimes of being
Yes.
physical. And so the personality aspect picks up where we last left off with it.
Yes.
Correct? And then we keep building.
Absolutely. And in my book, One True Home Behind the Veil of Forgetfulness, it's based on my 5 most important lives. And they were important because I grew the most spiritually and I enlightened. And the last life that I lived before I signed on as Angel Ariel was my life as a Lakota medicine man.
No, you didn't.
No, you did.
which was an extraordinary life.
Of course.
And just embracing Father Sky and Mother Earth and living that life and living that heaven on earth existence.
Where that's normal, seeing those energies in that lifetime, connecting with the animals, connecting to the earth, that was normal everyday living.
Yeah.
That we've all gotten so far away from. Did you come out of that lifetime before you came into this one?
Yes.
Girl, no wonder. That's a lot of stuff.
Oh, it's a lot. And when you read the book, you'll see the arc. It's quite a singular novel because there have been lots of books written about past lives before. A lot of them were written in the Piscean age. This was written with the energies of the Aquarian age, and it was written not so much to try to get people to believe in past lives, but for them to remember their own journey to their one true home. And when they read about Ariel going through these physical incarnations, then crossing over and going across the veil, meeting with the etheric council, going over that incarnation, and then she lives in the afterlife, doing the things that she loves doing until the time where she chooses to come back, meets with the etheric council, writes a contract depending on what lessons she either learned or didn't learn. And then the arc comes down to another incarnation, and then she lives that life, and then she goes across the veil again. So it's this upward and downward, or side by side, because they're parallel universes, to see the growth that she goes through, and then the last life as that medicine man, and then she embraces all of those lives and realizes that she wants to step into service to the divine, and then what happens as a result of that.
So when did you realize the past lives? Was it in this new incarnation?
Yes.
Or, okay.
They started to come in very, very easily and very clearly. It's interesting. Before the walk-in, the former soul's name was Claire Candy. But if anybody called the former soul Claire, she would rail against it and say, "I hate that name." She was named after her grandmother Clara. I'm sorry, Grandmother Clara. but she railed against it. But with the walk-in experience and all the Claires coming in, they were just clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient. I embraced both names, so I get almost as many people calling me Claire as I do Candy, and then I answer to both. But more than not, I'll get Candy.
That's fascinating. I mean, that's really fascinating. So could you share maybe a couple other of your past lives?
Yes.
I would love
I don't want to spoil it.
I don't want to spoil
don't
it.
spoil the book. Yeah, but
I'm on a teaser or something.
Okay, but you read the back synopsis of the book, and it'll say my life as an Egyptian princess, my life as a healer. And this is where the love for that Scottish and Irish and Celtic, sort of culture and music and fairies and the fairy realm, that's where all the next life was as a healer in 14th century Scotland. Life after that was my favorite life. I was a whore in Venice. I was actually I was a very high class whore. I was a courtesan. I was a courtesan, and this was before the Spanish Inquisition. This was before they were looked down upon or actually
very
destroyed.
In vogue.
And so we were high class women, and the reason that it was my favorite life was because they were the only women that were allowed to be educated.
Really?
Yes, and
I did not know that.
Yes, they needed to be educated because they bedded heads of state and they, emperors and kings, and and they often sat and gave counsel when it came to diplomatic affairs because they were so well read. And that's my intellect and my love
amazing.
of books.
There's a huge, I think we've always had this weird thing about sexuality and sensuality on planet Earth. And I also find that I read for lots of people who are in that industry, especially in this town. And I find that it's healing work. So separate from getting to be educated in that century, there's so much authentic healing that goes into it if you're coming at it from that angle.
Yes.
And I can see that.
Well, and especially in Venice in those days because, I saw a wonderful video on YouTube how it's just recently, maybe in the past hundreds of years, that marriage has meant love. Before then, marriage was just a business contract.
Yep.
And then, men
And
had...
mostly not between men and women, is the
Yes.
fathers of the women.
Yes, and men had their mistresses,
Yeah.
and it was brought countries together and fortunes together, and it had nothing to do with love. And so a lot of times and especially in Venice in those days, the very, very wealthy families, they did not want their sons to be married off and the fortunes to be dissipated. And so hence they needed to get them relief. And so in come the courtesans, and they are, they're well paid.
That would have been a good job.
It was wonderful, the opulence and the... I had beautiful palazzos, and I had magnificent gowns and jewelry, and
That sounds nice.
it was beautiful. But in that life, I was very haughty, and I treated my servants and others with a lot of disdain. And so when it came time to choose another life, I went to the Etheric Council, and I said, I really want to feel like what it feels like to have all my liberties taken away. And I chose a harrowing life as a slave on the west coast of Africa as a young girl. And I was captured and then taken across the horrendous Middle Passage to Fredericksburg, Virginia, and was on a slave plantation.
So for the people that are listening in now or even later on the podcast, for those that don't feel or see our past lives, what do you suggest for people that want to seek what they once were to help them in this life? What would you suggest to them?
Okay, I knew I was Italian when I was 8 years old. Because every time my parents would say, we're going to go out for dinner, where would you like to go? Oh, I only want to go to one place. There was a family-run, mom-and-pop Italian restaurant. And when I walked in, it was the music, and it was the culture, and it was the camaraderie, and the Italian language. And for others, I would suggest that you already know your past lives. You'll get a sense of, for me, Australia is my home. It was one of, it was after Lemuria, but my twin flame, my lovely Pete, and I were Aborigines there 32,000 years ago and keepers of a sacred well. I don't have to go any further to say when I think about Australia, I just melt inside. It's the red dust, and it's the unusual animals and the unusual people, and it's just it speaks to my heart. So people already know what they're drawn to, whether it's a culture or the foods or something.
Right.
They don't have to be so technical about it to remember every detail about their past lives, because once you open up to it, probably more will come in.
Mm-hmm.
you know.
And I think that's true when you think about siblings, how they're born into the same family, but they're so different on taste and the things they look towards as a career, and you're like, where did they ever get that idea? So I guess that does make sense if they bring that from another past life.
Oh, good God, yeah. I've done lots of past lives and stuff, and I think there's one brother in particular, every past life I've ever done where he showed up, he's always been a Viking,
Oh, really?
a raper, a pillager, an entitled person. If you have $1 and he has $1.05, he's going to take your dollar because he's entitled to it. And I've seen him many a times at a table where he's come in and taken over in a past life and just reached over and just slit the throat of the head of the family that was sitting there and then take their plate. And while the person is still gurgling blood, he's like eating their big old...
Well, it depends what dessert it is.
But it's fascinating how we keep getting dumped into the same apple barrel with the same people from different incarnations.
Yeah, journey of souls. Journey of souls.
So, well, let's take just a 15-second break for one of our sponsors, and when we get back, we have more of Claire Candy Hough. So don't go anywhere. This is Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor.
And we'll be right back. Today's show is sponsored by Adventures Unlimited Press. Take your mind on a literary journey and go to adventuresunlimitedpress.com to purchase books from our famed experts featured right here on Truth Be Told. That's adventuresunlimitedpress.com. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Eddie Connor.
And I'm Tony Sweet.
And we have our guest in-house, Claire Candy Hough, and she's talking about her new book. It is a channeled novel called One True Home, Behind the Veil of Forgetfulness. Now, before you got here, I asked Tony, I said, are you sure that's not the veil of forgiveness? And so we Googled it, and it's like the veil of forgetfulness.
Make sure we didn't misspell it.
And that's a huge thing in your line of work, because some people will come to me and they'll say, I want to know who I was in my past life. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. And then they want to know all of these things. They want to know every life, every moment, every this, every that. And the veil of forgetfulness is a protection for humans. And could you truly imagine you would be schizophrenic if you could remember yeah, just if you had to remember everything you ever ate for breakfast in this lifetime alone, first of all, it'd be humiliating. What do you mean Cracker Jacks and ice cream for breakfast? I didn't want to see that. At the same time, though, it is truly so that you're protected and you can put your attention and your energy where your heart desires. I love how you were talking about before the break, how when Tony asked, how can other people who don't know what you know go in and find out what other incarnations they may have had? And what I got from what you said, it's you just know that you know that you know. And it's a feeling language. And for me, the spirit world, non-physical, is a feeling communicative universe. It's not a speaking and hearing thing. It is a feeling frequency that helps us understand and communicate back and forth with it. And I find that everything I love in this lifetime, I can't talk about African Americans in that era because I was a slave too, or Native Americans. I can't talk about it without crying because it's that near and dear to my heart. And while all the other boys, all the white boys in my trailer park growing up, were playing Evel Knievel and Steve Austin and G.I. Joe and the Lone Ranger, I was pretending I was Tonto and the $6 Million Woman. Because I was replaying out some of my immediate past lives. Yeah. I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought everybody did that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, and we know what speaks to our heart.
Yeah.
And we know what makes us feel very comfortable, So it's just been recently that I've let my hair do its own thing. For many years, and I straightened my hair, and I think that was partly a throwback to, sort of being that kinky-haired slave in those days, and
the humidity.
And thinking to myself, if I could just fit in, if I could just be normal, if I could just be like everyone else.
And that's something we grow. I believe all humans have that. I do. I believe empaths, sensitives, intuitives have it harder, especially if there's no authority figures around us that are guiding us through it, because they too have lived through it. Instead, it's just kind of like, well, you bumped your head. No, there's not some entity grabbing you in the basement.
Yeah.
You really did see a ghost. No, you didn't. You had a bad dream. Well, then why did Grandma and Mama see it too?
That's true.
And I think, I grew up in Kansas, where I guess if you looked at my life, it was very normal. I mean, I grew up
Depends
in
on who you ask.
a small town. I was, I wasn't great in school, but I was very successful as a sports person. I was, champion in shot put and champion on the football team and this and that.
And a weightlifter.
But I always felt different.
Oh, yeah.
I always, was more sensitive. I was very sensitive. I didn't want to do football because I didn't like the aggressiveness of it.
Oh, yeah.
But where I grew up, that was supposed to be. And I think
that was your way out.
That was my
for
way
a lot
out.
of people.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I always looked at life differently. I always, nature and animals, that's where I was attracted towards, where it made me feel more comfortable being out in nature and being around animals.
Yeah, and I was going to say, many of us who fall under that banner of being light workers or conscious, we were anchored into families, and we knew that we were different. Many of us looked around and said, I'm adopted. This can't be my family.
Every day of my life.
I remember one of my earliest remembrances, I was just like a little tyke, maybe about 14, 15 months old, possibly younger, standing up in my crib and looking at the angels and the fairies in my room. And I telepathically conveyed to them, I said, this is a very nice family, but thank you very much, but I want to go home now. And they said to me, I'm sorry, this is your home because you deemed it and you contracted it to be so. And I started to cry and I started to sob. They started to fade from the room, and I shook so terribly that I collapsed and I just, fell asleep sobbing because I wanted to go home.
Did you see the movie Heart and Souls?
Yes.
Girl.
I love that movie.
I do too. Remember the first time you watched it and then they're starting to all fade away from the little boy's life?
Yeah.
And I'm just like blubbering.
Don't
And
even
I'm
get
like,
a
that's
tissue.
what happened whenever I was a kid.
Yeah.
Where's
And
the
that's how
tissues?
it's obviously sensationalized.
Yeah.
But that really is what happens. I remember my twin sister leaving. And I remember, it wasn't pretty. We were poor on top of it. We weren't a pretty bunch of people.
Well, we have about 10, 12 minutes left. And in that time, I want to talk about twin flame.
Okay. It's a hot topic now.
Yes. And I've really, again, I've not heard the term that often or just until recently. Could you explain what a twin flame is?
And tell us the difference between, because everybody loves to say,
Soulmates.
oh, he my soulmate. I'm like, a hamster can be your soulmate. The difference between a soulmate and a twin flame soul.
Okay, a twin flame, there is only one twin flame in any space, time, and dimension. It's your divine complement. When you were across the veil, you were perfect Ovid, if you want, a pure energy of perfect balance of masculine and feminine. When you decided to come down, you decided on a particular gender. You took this equipment over that equipment, and you're always searching for your other half.
Equipment.
You
I thought you were
choose-
talking. I'm on the same page.
Okay, and you're always searching. You're always searching for that other half of yours. Now, the difference between twin flames and soulmates is they're both very romantic in nature. Soulmates is somebody from your soul group that comes back. Most of the time in soulmate relationships, they'll play a contrasting role. They'll bring irritation, agitation, drama. They'll push your buttons so that they reflect something inside of you that still needs to be addressed. And if you don't learn the lesson, then you'll go, I'll show you, and I'll go off and find somebody else. And if you still don't turn the mirror back, and the reflection back within and resolve these issues, then you will draw another soulmate to yourself who is going to reflect back to you with the same agitation, irritation. That's why people
Maybe that's why I keep getting the same person all
yes,
the time.
on a carousel. They seem to be on the same carousel.
And Tony, that doesn't mean a threesome.
Sorry.
But
My mistake.
once you understand this and you turn the mirror back on yourself to resolve those issues, you don't have to play the soulmate game anymore. Another huge difference between soulmates and twin flames is in a twin flame relationship. Well, certainly in my and Pete's relationship, there are no challenges within the relationship. There are challenges in our lives. We're like two trains going down parallel tracks, and we are supportive of each other, and nothing is more important than the relationship, and the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. But one of the greatest differences between soulmates and twin flames is that twin flames, yes, it's very romantic in nature, but the true meaning of the twin flame relationship is they come back on a mission from God. They know that they're in a threesome with God at the top, and God is steering this relationship. So when God tells us to sell our beautiful beach home in Australia that we thought we were going to be there until we crossed the veil, it's for our highest good, it's for the greatest good of all concerned, and we don't question. And it's led to some miraculous things happening for us because we know that God is at the helm of the ship and He is guiding these missions and these endeavors and projects that we have. Soulmates wouldn't have this. It's within the relationship that they're brought together to work out those issues and things and present a lot of contrast, but not so much in twin flames because you only draw your twin flame to yourself when you have resolved all your karma. And not everybody, Rachel actually asked me, does everyone have a twin flame? And I said, yes. I said, but there are so many incarnations where your twin flame will not be here, will not be on the earth plane because they can help you better across the veil.
Yeah, that's my twin. Because I was sad and sad and sad for years and years and years. And she said, I could hold the space for you and me together over here 1,000,000 times better than she could have ever held it on the earth plane.
Really?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So again, like Eddie said, the terms soulmate has been thrown around. Even back in psychics, I remember Sylvia Brown when she did a reading for me.
In 1957.
Yeah. But she was throwing out, your soulmate, your soulmate, your soulmate. But now it makes sense because my soulmate at the time was somebody that knew my buttons.
Yeah.
Every single day knew how to hit a button. And I'm very kind of level-headed and don't get upset. But this person, one word could just
Set you off.
Yeah, it would set me off. And now it makes sense to see why these people keep coming back in my life. And as I'm getting now at 40, almost 46 years old, I'm the one where I'm like, that's enough.
Yeah.
I was like, that's enough. It was enough for me.
And I was going to say, and also twin flames are a hot topic now because people are shifting to higher frequencies.
And I feel that too.
And so they are raising the bar when it comes to relationships. A lot of them have cleared and cleansed a lot of things.
Oh, I'm sure,
Well, and I find too that outside of relationships in general, humanity, especially in North America, I can speak mostly about this country because I've lived here my whole life, and that is I've noticed here that there is a suppression that has been going on for almost 2 decades now. And there are people who have been pushed out of work, out of jobs, out of communities, and pushed into lower classes, the way we think of it here. And they are now open-minded enough, desperate, open-minded enough, hurt enough, sad enough, fed up enough to think outside of the normal. And then they're reaching for something to fill that space that's been taken away from them over and over and over. And I feel like that's where the soul comes back in, and people are, you can fight, you can revolt and all of that, but it really comes from inside. Really comes from inside. There's a Cherokee saying that says the longest journey a man will ever make is from his head to his heart.
Yes,
and I feel like that's what your whole message is about, the heart.
it is.
And talking that we're not talking, but vibrating that language.
I don't teach anybody anything that they don't already know. What I do is I take their hand and I help lead them back to their own divine, eternal nature. And when they read One True Home, the comments and the reviews that I've been getting is that people start to cry. They start to remember. It's a journey of remembrance, that they are multidimensional. They've done this before, and it's embracing their own divinity inside, and it's going back to their one true home.
That's beautiful.
Okay, what's the TV stuff around you?
I've been told so much, Eddie, that I'm gonna be approached to host my own TV program. Maybe I need a reading with you.
Yeah, I can see it as clear as a bell. And you might enjoy Robert Schwartz's material, The Soul's Plan and The Soul's Gift. You guys are very complementary, totally different energies, very complementary. You're saying the same thing in a different way. And ironically, right now I'm reading The Education of Oversoul 7 for the third time in my life. Have you read that yet?
No.
Girl, it's Jane Roberts.
Oh, I love Jane Roberts.
It's trans-channeled, and it describes what happens when we leave this planet, what happens when we're on the planet, and the oversoul that's working with 7 souls and other incarnations simultaneously in a parallel universe, being guided by his soul guide, his spirit guide, and her spirit guide, and their spirit guide. It's phenomenal. And so I read that before I fall asleep. And then whenever I fall asleep, I'm kind of like, oh, it's all baby Jesus.
I was going to say, another thing that around the TV is that with Pete and myself being twin flames, is that we are creating a TV show, and which we hope will spark and come into existence 2017.
Yeah, and there's traveling across the continents, it feels like, connected to that, and or something else that you're going to be going to.
Speaking and workshops, and I'm going to be a busy bee.
You are going to be a busy bee. I can see you talking to people and just welling up all the time.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we are almost out of time here, but on Tuesdays at 11 a.m., do you still do your radio show?
Tuesdays, 11 a.m., going into my 4th year, Angel Healing House Radio every week. Unlike your show and many others, the Posse of Angels have told me, do not ever feature guests. I channel 4 to 5 pages every single week on a relevant topic for the collective consciousness, and then I take calls for free angel readings after that.
Good for you. Yeah. That's amazing. I'm gonna have to listen in, and you're gonna have to pick up her book, One True Home: Behind the Veil of Forgetfulness, and you can pick that up where?
On my website, which is angelhealinghouse.com, or Amazon.
Perfect. Well, we loved having you here.
It's been
Yes, we loved having you here, and definitely we hope that you'll come back.
I would love to come back. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, we want to make sure you guys stick around. We have another great show here in about 10 minutes, and we have Linda Gabriel going to be on the show. So don't go anywhere. This is Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor.
And we are out. Be right back in about 10 minutes.